Let's ask Congressman Mike Coffman. He is a Republican of Colorado who has a plan to furlough federal workers for a couple of weeks next year. And Congressman, tell us first how your plan would work.
Well, first of all, it would cut congressional pay by 10% to set the example, and what it would do then to all federal workers, with the exception of those involved in national security and public safety, would in fact have the equivalent of a 2-week furlough. Now that could be spread over a day a month for 10 months, but that would equate to a savings of $5.5 billion, and I think that that would go towards reducing the deficit.
Now, as I remember, back in '95, actually, I guess it was early '96. They also furloughed workers during the time that when the government was shut down. That didn't go down too well with the voters. Do you think that there would be a similar kind of voter backlash now as there was in '95 and '96?
No, not at all. I think that the American people realize today that the situation that this country is in, relative to overspending, the reckless spending by the Congress of the United States, the Democrat-controlled Congress of the United States, and the debt that this country is accumulating is simply out of control and unsustainable. That was not the case in 1996. That clearly is the case today, and I think that what you see is a backlash across the entire country for the direction that Washington has gone.
But you know, already we are hearing the same kind of rhetoric. The president and some of his aides are suggesting that Republicans are going to cause another government shutdown like the one in '96. Do you think that their game plan is to try to repeat what President Clinton did, which was to focus on that government shutdown? And a lot of people say that's how he won re-election in '96.
Well, I think they've really demagogued the issue, and I think their view that they've built a government larger than this country can possibly afford, and their view clearly is not to cut spending but to raise taxes. And I think that, you know, they accuse Republicans of having driven this country into a ditch, but yet I think this president, Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, are trying to drive this country over a cliff.
All right, well, let's focus on a couple of people then who actually have suggested, although at least one of them has pulled back a little bit, that perhaps a government shutdown, if necessary, needed to be done to prove the point that we just don't have the money. One is Lynn Westmoreland, Republican of Georgia, and the other is Joe Miller, who's running for the Senate seat in the great state of Alaska. So would you suggest to both of these folks that perhaps a government shutdown is wrong, not the way to go?
No, I would not suggest that, and I think we're going to have to play hardball with this president when it comes to cutting spending, and that's going to be one of the things on the table. Obviously, I hope that that's not going to occur, but he's going to threaten that, and we need to stand firm.
And what again? I'm sort of trying to plan this out, if I can, the future. So you guys say, look, we're not going to be spending any money on any programs that we don't have money for. That would essentially include, I mean, dozens and dozens of active agencies, not to mention the ones that have been put forth over the past 18 months. So are you prepared to furlough workers, not just for 2 weeks, but possibly for months?
Well, we clearly need to go back to the spending levels that existed prior to this president coming in office. And then what we need to do is agree on a path to reduce spending over time and bring us into a balanced budget. I don't think that can happen overnight, but we do need to get back to the spending levels prior to this administration. We are this year running a deficit of $1.4 trillion, and that's just unsustainable.
Well, and we're looking right now, Congressman, just so you know, at some of the new agencies that are created by just the health care provision alone. Of course, there are a whole bunch of new agencies and bureaucracies by financial reg and other things, but what would you do with these agencies? You simply could not fund them. I mean, would you just pull the plug on them as some of them are starting up?
Well, there's no question that the control of the appropriations process is through Congress.
Absolutely.
And the ability certainly is to deny funding to some of these agencies to reduce the size of the federal government. So I think that that's certainly going to be consideration. Obviously, it depends on how well we do in this election. This election is a referendum on the direction of this country, and I think that most Americans agree that this country is clearly on the wrong track, and certainly most economists agree in terms of looking at the level of spending that's unsustainable.